Yeah, thank you, thank you. And just want to say a quick thank you to Little Patuxent Review for publishing me and everyone else here, and for organizing the reading. Thank you to the Writers Center for opening the space for us, and thank you all for coming out on a Saturday for poetry. So I'm going to switch up the order a little bit. The first poem I'm going to read, I can't read it without without giving the backstory to it. So, it's really quick. My wife talks a lot, and just to give you some idea, we have an hour-long commute. And usually when I pick her up, I say, how was your day? Like she just goes. And so like the remaining 15 minutes, she'll say, oh, I'm sorry, how was your day? So what I started doing is just kind of going in autopilot. So I'm listening, but just enough to register the right emotion. So, oh, for real? Oh, congrats. So, and the autopilot gets really bad when I'm hungry. So this poem is a response. She wants to ask me, where do you go, excuse me, when you're here but not here? I wanted bananas, a bunch of them, spooned body to body like small yellow kayaks. So I missed what you said about the war in Libya. When you say Gaddafi, I think of how they spoil if they sit too long on their wicker thrones. We're in my car listening to WTOP. We passed the Spanish market that calls what I love plátanos. Just saying plata, my tongue snaps like the slingshot's elastic strip hurling A's like stones. You complain about the weak radio signal. I could nod and punctuate your frustrations with hums, as if I'm listening, as if my head weren't full of hunger's SOS. I could pretend that the radio static is annoying, as if the sizzling sound it makes doesn't have me thinking of sweet, chunky rumba slices frying in my mother's skillet, or plantains boiled whole with dasheen, dumplings and potatoes to eat with saltfish and coconut bake, plates and plates of large bananas, edible boomerangs, nature's golden sugar-filled tusk, the moon's waning frown or waxing smile. Thank you. Persistence. A poet tells another, God won't give us what we can't handle, which is why he claims he's not famous, why he's scrambling for gigs. You know that hustle, when a desire to be celebrated drives an eager artist like a born-again peddling religion door to door. You remember the brother outside Target, the one slinging church postcards, determined to stack his crowns in heaven, one for each soul he brings to salvation, which for you is a peaceful place below the sky of your insecurities. It's where your wife wish you would go instead of venting about being unknown, the leaf tendrils of envy climbing you like a trellis. And there's your wife, constant gardener, tending to the plot of you, where pride, the incessant weed, threatens to stifle your growth. The poet's friend tells him his hustle is part of life's long lesson in humility, that giant church where gratitude and happiness announce the Holy Spirit, and the sermon's a constant reminder, despite how far you travel, you always fall short of your potential. Beacon. An intern asked, aren't you scared? And you remember the hospital clerk saying, what you're doing is courageous. You do what you have to for your wife whose life is leashed to a box, cleaning her blood before spooling it back into her body. It does what it has to because her kidneys can't. And weren't they courageous standing their ground before lupus took them out? Its gluttony left you scratching your head, lost in this new life, the one that marks you donor and your wife recipient, the one where the transplant center's another turf to navigate, this life, where words like renal failure and nephrectomy seizing your new tongue. You watch your wife sleep while the machine chimes and beeps, remembering the intern's question. Of course, there were moments that gobbled your bravery to a morsel. The emergency room visits, lupus nearly taking her out. But isn't she the courageous one? How she welcomes each day, even those where grief is the overcast sky. Those moments when the only light is a heroic heart blazing these dark streets, winding beyond the mysterious and unknown into the light. You're a floor below me, healing in your room. Both of us soar from the divine puppetry of science. God pulling the surgeon strings, sliding the kidney from inside me, routing it to its new body in Connecticut. And wasn't he present in the hand's deft dance and how hope lights the operating room like a stage? Your new kidney ready for its debut inside you, having traveled in a freight of prayers, 17 hours from Minneapolis to D.C. Didn't our road here seem even longer, not being a direct match? The hiccup in lab results, us hurling our names into an exchange pool deep with uncertainty. And here we are, in our beds, an elevator ride from each other. This moment, like the 90-degree day beyond our windows, the cloudless sky, shadows receding in the sunlight. Oh, thank you. So this last poem is for my brother-in-law, Tolu, and it's another poem about envy, but a different kind of envy. And it opens with a quote. When you run the marathon, you run against the distance, not the other runners and not the time. And that's a quote from Haile Gebrselassie. The poem is called Stride, and it's, again, for my brother-in-law, Tolu. I don't remember when it happened, he says. All I know is one day Eli put himself to bed. You watch your brother-in-law with an envy you haven't felt since you were 16, when you learned your little brother lost his virginity before you. You remember feeling like he crossed the finish line before you started the race. Your brother far beyond the horizon of that milestone. You're just as far behind your brother-in-law, wishing you could breeze the distance to him in this full marathon called parenting. Even now, he's disappearing from your field of vision as he goes on about his kids sleeping in their rooms, while your 3-year-old holds your bedtime hostage, demanding another story, crying and jumping when you say it's sleepy time. She's taking over your California king, doing mixed martial arts in her sleep, the toddler with the elbow and knee strikes, with the jabs and overhand punches. Your bonnet-donning pajama kid tests your limits when each sleepless night leaves you like a runner at mile 20, hunched over, gasping, glinting with sweat, muscles blazing. But this is just the starting line of a long-distance test of patience. It's how your parents must have felt, especially your poor dad. It couldn't have been easy being the only foreigner at his job, trading barbs with the other black electricians who riffed on his accent and the extra shit he got from the white foreman. It couldn't have been easy trying to keep it together, verbally sparring with guys he was smarter than, then coming home to your attitude. How many times you almost broke him, his patience, when he nearly came out of himself to give you a piece of his mind. Luckily, he never broke his stride. If you learned anything from him, it's enjoying small victories, even in the moments that seem hard. It's a lesson your brother-in-law takes in strides. His stories about his kids is his way of coaching you to keep running. Thank you.